I'm Wes Newport. Welcome to the second edition of the Indiana Guardsman, a video magazine produced by the Indiana National Guard to inform Guard members, their families, and the public about what's happening in the Guard. The Guard's been busy, and we've got a lot to tell you about since our last issue.
Indianapolis in May is a whirlwind of activity. It is a month-long celebration of parades, marching bands, cars, and queens. The sights and sounds range from the exciting to the somber. As the world's eyes focus on the Circle City in May, serving in the background and known to few, an organization supports the myriad of activities, the Indiana National Guard. The Chief Operations Officer for the Guard explains.
When you start out the month of May, you start out with the mini marathon, which is run on Friday. Basically, we provide right now a lot of medical support, a triage center. We do not provide the patient care, but we provide the system or the facilities. The next activity is the Armed Forces Day activity at the 500 track. We're quite involved with that now. That involves an equipment display by each of the services. We are part of that at this point. It involves an aviation display. We control all the aviation access and coordinate, bring them into the track. Then it involves an enlistment ceremony wherein the Senator Lugar will swear in probably about 30 or 40 personnel into the various services. And then we have an F-16 flyover on Saturday, and normally we'll fly a Cobra flyover on Sunday. The next activity involved in May is the memorial service downtown, which was yesterday on Friday at 11 o'clock. We're involved in the planning coordination of that, the flyover. And then the final activity, which is really strictly, has been the Guard all along as far as supporting the 500 Festival Committee, is in fact the parade today. Because we're used to a chain of command and a structure, it lends well for us to do these type of things that we're doing for the parade.
Some of those support missions include providing a communication center linking all the units and people running the parade together. Along with parade marshaling and demarshaling, the Guard provides many other types of support, to include a lost child center.
In this tent, we're going to be bringing the lost children that we find from the various points we have along the parade route, and we'll bring them here, we'll log them in, take a picture of them, and then when any family member comes to pick them up, there will be a picture taken of them with the child so that we have security reasons for protection of the child. We also will be entertaining the children while they're waiting for their parent or guardian to pick them up with coloring books, suckers, whatever they need.
May is also a time for remembrance and honoring those who have fallen fighting for our nation. The Guard supports the Memorial Day service with a ceremonial unit caisson platoon and other assets. At this year's service, Indiana Medal of Honor winner Sammy Davis spoke to the crowd.
What I want you to understand when you go through these memorials, both here and on the circle, and you see these people's names, that they weren't all old people. That usually they were very young people. But what we also must remember is the reason that those young people gave their life was for a better America. And what they would want you to do, if you could ask any of them, what kind of memorial would you want? I'm sure that they would say, make my country be as good as it could be. If I'm going to give my life for my country, can't you stand up for what you believe is right in your country today? Is that so hard to ask? Believe in it. Believe in your country and for what it stands for, and believe in yourself and what you know is right, and always stand up for it. And that is the most finest memorial that you could ever make, that you could ever build for these people that have given their lives for our freedom. There ain't no doubt I love this land.
From downtown Indianapolis, Captain Joe Drury reporting.
Representative Stephen Booyer was on hand for the Armed Forces Day festivities. Indiana Guardsman cameras caught up with the freshman congressman to discuss the Guard's future.
Right now, under the budget constraints that President Clinton has announced, with the budget and its pressures upon the armed services, we're going to have a 41% reduction in total force by year 1997. And what that does, it places greater responsibility on the total force concept of the total integration of the reserve, the National Guard with the active. And what that signal means is as we move into the next century, that there will be greater pressures placed upon the National Guard to play even a greater and stronger role in the total force concept.
Booyer serves on the House Armed Services Committee and says in the future the entire Defense Department will be forced to become more efficient, and the Guard's role will likely increase to a level higher than that seen during Desert Storm.
With the reduced force structure that we're going to have as we move into the next century, we will not have a force to react to a second contingency. That's what we used to have back in the 70s and the 80s, was to have a second contingency reactionary force. And if we're fighting a regional conflict such as Desert Storm, and you have say the North Koreans pour across the border, we're going to have to rely greater upon the National Guard for second contingencies. So the Guard will play a tremendous role as we move into the next century.
Booyer says he's pushing to get more money for the Guard to go along with the new responsibilities. Specialist Gary Thompson in Indianapolis.
We all expect nice spring days like this one, but we know things can change drastically here in Indiana. So the Indiana Guard and other local agencies in Terre Haute teamed up to prepare for the worst. Specialist Gary Thompson reports.
If you don't practice, there's no way you can really perform in a real emergency.
We're going to practice. It's very important to practice the different arts that are required on an exercise like this so that it'll be ready to use when it's needed.
You know, in an exercise like this, you have 10, 12, 14 different agencies. You always go through that who's in charge, and of course we're not in charge, as you well know. We take our orders militarily or through civil defense coordinators, so that's pretty well ironed out. And as far as the other agencies and whom they work for and who's in charge, clearly in this particular operation the Red Cross is in charge.
And our responsibility is to be prepared so that whenever disaster strikes, Red Cross is there and activated and ready to go to help the victims and the other workers in the disaster.
It was an exercise in planning for the worst. More than a dozen state, federal, and volunteer community agencies put their skills to the test at the county fairgrounds just outside Terre Haute. The readiness test was the brainchild of a Red Cross volunteer and tests the emergency responders' ability to work together to serve a disaster-stricken community.
Just like what people saw with the tent cities after Hurricane Andrew, in a sense we'll be simulating that here today.
We're showing them the capabilities of our water purification equipment. In other words, if the water is contaminated due to a natural disaster, we can purify it up to 7,500 gallons per hour. Then along with that, we're working along with the Red Cross on how to erect tents in case we'd have to go into a tent city exercise. We're sling loaning tents in right now by aircraft and UH-1 aircraft.
The operation called for Guard helicopters to airlift a dozen general-purpose tents into a small field where soldiers and civilians work together to set them up. On one side of the fairgrounds, the 438th Chemical Company set up a static display of their decontamination capabilities. The 438th commander says their main mission in times of disaster is to provide manpower.
But what we could also do is supply a limited amount of water to possibly fight a fire or to provide water to clean people should they become contaminated with some chemical, or to provide vehicles to move people or equipment around.
Miller says the practice his soldiers get from reality-based exercises like this one will help them to better perform their National Guard duties.
One of the primary purposes of the National Guard is to support the state which they come from and to support the communities. And it shows them that the equipment can be multi-purpose. It's not just for, when we go to war. It can also be used for fighting natural disasters.
The type of disaster as far as earthquake or tornado is not really what we're playing here. Is who's in charge, who's working alongside each other, can we talk to each other, what assets are available, and how the community works rapidly together to put itself back together.
Sure do appreciate that.
No problem.
It's going to train us all in how to help in the civilian, with the civilian disaster or civil disturbance or whatever the exercise is. And so the folks get to learn, they get the hands-on type of training, they get to go out and practice those kinds of things which we need the expertise in to do to help the civilian folks.
Would you like to see more of this kind of thing, sir?
Personally, yes. As you know, the Guard has two missions. One is a federal mission and one is a state mission. We're the only reserve with that state mission, and I take that state mission very seriously. And I think that we need to do these kinds of things more often, particularly when we involve the Red Cross and the state police and the other, all of the local facilities, the local government and the local hospitals.
The Armed Forces has built a reputation for working well with our allies to achieve a common goal. The most recent example, of course, is Operation Desert Storm. But in February, Fort Wayne's 122nd Fighter Wing returned from its deployment to Benifsway, Egypt.
I think it was a very successful exercise, and I think, if nothing else, it allowed our personnel to learn something about the culture of the people living in the Middle East.
They had their mechanics on the flight line with ours and getting the jets ready for the daily sorties. We had people working with the supply teams and our pilots briefing with their pilots.
Did that go well?
Excellent.
You got
They worked real well with us.
I'd go back in a heartbeat. The people there were very nice, very loyal, and they were all sad to see us go. So.
Some people might think Mech Infantry only provides an armored taxi service to the battlefield. But Sergeant Dave Strobel joined Mech Battalion at Camp Atterbury and shows they have some firepower as well.
Gunners, at this time, this range is no longer clear. You are clear from fire at targets in your lane as they appear.
Well, the 50 cal is a heavy machine gun. It's developed to knock out light armor vehicles long distance. It's a very powerful weapon. That's what we're out here today doing, is just getting familiar with it and getting down to where we can hit our targets real good. We do it, like I said, every year. It gets better every year. So, the tank commander of a 113, it's a personnel carrier. They're fitted with 50 caliber. Platoon leaders and platoon sergeants' vehicles are also 113, and it's the main weapon of that vehicle. It can't knock out a tank, but it can knock out pretty much anything else.
This is the first time I fired the 50 cal. It was a great experience. It's probably an experience like driving your car for your first time. You get behind the wheel, drive down the road, you got your butterflies. The same thing as firing is. I was nervous as all could be, but I managed to make it through it.
That's all the time we have for this edition, but be sure to look for our next issue when Captain Joe Drury and Specialist Gary Thompson join our troops on location from the jungles of Honduras. Until then, this is Specialist Les Newport for the 120th Public Affairs Detachment and the Indiana Guard Video Magazine.